Demon Vampire. Special Science Report 1192 Prologue Acceptance. If you had told me a year ago what I know now, I would call bullshit, Harold admitted. These things are fairy tales, nothing more. He sighed, although I think Iada would hit me for saying that. Chapter 1. The day everything changed. The platypus stood there as it happened. His name is Harold Thompson. He watched as the announcement spread over the live international news. His solitary nature and lone attitude did not lend well to such revelations. He's used to his research, to his test tubes, to his lab. He's out of his element in New York City, especially this day. He told himself that it was a fluke story. He didn't believe in vampires, but the news that day argued otherwise. The crowd gawked in the moment, a whisper that quickly grew to a roar. The street was ablaze with conversation. Most thought it to be a joke that someone was messing with the teleprompter. Whatever it was, it didn't seem funny. The reporter mentioned that last month a man came forward and claimed he owned a vast amount of property in Europe. When confronted, the documents he presented were found to be over 400 years old. When asked, the man hesitated to answer but refused to leave. In an attempt to justify his rights as the deed holder, he stated his identity and explained that he was a vampire. When asked for proof, he casually walked over to a car and lifted it off the ground with one hand. Naturally, the company and its landowners wanted more proof. So the group contesting his origins convened a special research laboratory in New York City to conduct the necessary tests to determine if he was indeed a real vampire. The date was September 1st. Harold had been in New York almost a month. He was setting up an empty lab to start local testing that was to be discussed at the latest possible moment due to a few legal concerns and several confidentiality agreements. There's no fucking way. Harold stared at the large screen above. They would have told me if it was something like this. He made his way uptown to his apartment. The high-rise offered a temporary home that was generous, even by his standards. He was used to free accommodations, but a spacious loft with a view was insane. There must have been a huge working budget to place him here. He opened the steel door. The chirp of his unconfigured voicemail confirmed that he had 2 new messages. Cardboard shipping boxes lined the walls 5 levels high. He was a master of procrastination outside of work. In 3 weeks, he had unpacked only 3 small boxes. 2 were clothing. The Othera were his computer and home phone. He didn't believe in cell phones. He enjoyed the idea of not being available at certain times. The space spoke worlds to a fashion choice that Harold truly had no interest in. It was modern minimalist with large open rooms that held emptiness. The kitchen consisted of flat steel appliances with small red accents on mahogany cabinets. It made no sense to him. A clean Motel 6 was fine for most any occasion. This was overkill. Most of his regular contracts called for only a few months of work, then he had to move. He would usually spend every waking hour at his job and every night inside. He enjoyed his solitude. He had reached a zen level to his antisocial attitude. At 6'1", he was lengthy and seemingly frail upon any first meeting. It always made his position of authority slightly questionable. He wore thin, rectangular metal glasses that framed his gaunt face surprisingly well. He was in no way an ugly man, only an unattractive and uninteresting one. His deep brown hair was slightly mixed with shades of red and black. He had a white patch of hair on the back of his head slightly to the right. It was a birthmark of sorts that he always hid from others by wearing a baseball cap in public. He hated baseball, but the cap served its purpose well enough. His eyes were a dark brown, simple yet kind. He was single, and it was apparent by his grooming habits. His 5 o'clock shadow was 3 days old. For pure lack of attention, he didn't bother keeping a clean shave. The phone rang, the blue LED panel lit the caller ID. That informed Harold he wasn't going to like the conversation waiting for him. It was work. Cillian Industries hadn't bothered him much. If they were calling now, it would seem that things were about to change. Phone on. He was proud of his voice-activated gadgets despite his lack of cell phone. Harold? Are you there? The feminine voice was out of breath. Damn it, Harold. Am I on speakerphone again? You know, I hate that phone of yours. He tossed his keys into a heavy glass bowl at the other end of the room. It was a daily ritual that usually made a welcome chime that he remembered from college. The bowl was a gift from his first girlfriend before she dumped him. She had hand-blown it during one of her many art classes that didn't get her a degree. He had kept it out of comfort, never really wanting to throw it away out of habit. Harold tossed his keys across the room, aiming for the bowl. "It's vampires, Harold," the woman blared over the speakerphone. The bowl shattered on impact. Harold watched in dismay as small pieces rolled off the ledge. His jaw dropped. His keys were never enough to damage it in the past. It had fallen before several times and from higher distances to no effect. Now it was in 47 pieces. Harold was silent. "Harold? Harold, did you hear me?" "I said vampires. We get to work on real vampires." The woman was ecstatic. "I heard you, Jenna." I saw the big news announcement, and a sense of dread overtook me. Harold walked to the shards of glass on the floor. Under his foot lay number 48. "And you're not excited about it?" "God, man, these are vampires we're talking about here. Aren't you even curious?" Jenna was. "I have more pressing issues. I could care less about who the specimen came from. We just run the tests and extract data. It's not like we'll ever get to meet any of the donors from the study." Harold swept up the debris into his hand. "I don't want to focus on vampires right now." "Okay, what the hell happened? Did you break your computer again? Another overclocking incident? Is that why you're so depressed all of a sudden?" Jenna was prying. Mary's bowl broke. Harold sighed. About time Jenna expressed instant disdain for Harold's choice of sentimentality. "I've hated that thing ever since that art reject ripped your heart out and served it to you in the form of a crappy ashtray." "It's not." Harold was cut off as he reached for the garbage bag near the window. "Bullshit. It's exactly like that. She held you back. You would have gone to medical school if it wasn't for her. She made you support her while she got her career in order, then left you in the defect bin." Jenna told the truth. Harold didn't want to hear it. "I would have gone. I just didn't have the time." Harold dusted off his hands into the large bag he had been using for a trash can. "Then can you tell me why you haven't tried again? Why you haven't picked up the desire you used to rant about 10 years ago in graduate school?" Jenna huffed. She knew the answer. Harold wasn't going to admit it no matter how hard she pushed him. "That's in the past now. I'm making a good living in this. I like it." Harold's words were convincing no one. "You need to get laid and find a good woman," Jenna instructed. "I tried that. Remember?" Harold said with disappointment. "Next time don't hit on a lesbian, especially one that's already your friend. My brain's just not wired in the way you want it to be. All you have to do is find one that is, and you're golden." Jenna was giving Harold relationship advice again. It was a tactic that had failed at the same step in countless attempts, the execution. Harold never followed through. Jenna hated it. "So just knock someone up, then find a good girl to settle down with. That's a great plan." Harold sighed, thinking about where to hang his keys. "You can be dense for a genius. You don't even know what it means to hook up. You should use protection. Don't be an idiot." Jenna scolded. Harold snapped back. "You never do." "That's because I don't have a dick." Jenna searched for the low blow. "And from the sounds of it, you don't either." "Goodbye, Jenna." Harold clicked the off button to his phone. "So tomorrow I'll be working on vampire blood. I wonder if they'll make us wear garlic in the lab," Harold said to himself. Harold's conversation with Jenna had exhausted him. He removed his dull coat and hung it on the closet door to the empty bedroom he was about to sleep in. He had only taken off his shirt when he heard it again. The answering machine still had 2 messages waiting. Harold made his way back to the phone base and clicked the irritating button. There was a beep. "Harold, it's Michelle Price, the operations manager at Cillian Industries. By now you've already seen the international story that's filling the airwaves. I need you to come in for an official briefing when you get the chance. There have been some additions to your team that I need to go over with you." Harold figured that Michelle would ask something along those lines. She was the type of person that cared more about policy and political correctness than most. There's also been a change in the setup of your lab, Michelle continued. Harold's knees got weak. We'll discuss everything when you get in tomorrow morning. Let's say 8:30 a.m., Michelle stated. Harold knew that she wasn't going to simply let him walk into the office without a date planned. Harold was a recluse at the best of times, though. Hearing about unauthorized changes to his lab stoked a fire in him that boiled his mind. This was supposed to be his project, his laboratory. Harold didn't like change. And Harold, tell Jenna she still has some of her things at my apartment. The message clicked off. Harold had known about Jenna's affair with Ms. Price since before he had flown out to New York. Jenna had a way of finding and converting women to her cause. This one just happened to be his next boss at the time. Their relationship lasted all of a month. Somehow, Harold found himself playing mediator. Harold exhaled as he pressed the button again. The machine beeped. Harold Thompson. The voice in the message paused. It was unfamiliar. Don't wear any silver to your meeting tomorrow. It will offend. The phone clicked. An automated voice kicked in. There are no more messages. The unknown voice was effeminate, though clearly a man. There was silk to his words, a reasoning behind his simple warning. Harold pondered why wearing silver to a staff meeting would have any effect at all. He was at least relieved. The only silver Harold owned was a silver cross his mother gave him. It was an attempt to bring Harold closer to some sort of religion other than science. It hadn't worked. He had worn it once and put it away in the same box it came in. It was still heavily packed away in one of the boxes in the living room. Harold lurched back to his bed, one of the perks of moving into a furnished loft. Are you sure he will be up to the task? That he has the empirical nerve to continue once we tell him the finer details of the trials? A young man in a suit stood with a scowl as he reviewed a file in his left hand. He's scientifically occidental. He'll be able to prove what you need. Don't worry. He's one of the best in his field. Michelle Price sat at her desk on the 30th floor of a corporate high-rise. The dim light hid her features from view. The only trait to shine through the darkness were her eyes. The light green glare was catching the few glimmers that crept into the large office. I don't want him quieting on day one of this operation once he finds out. He can't be a variable. The young man insisted on his peace of mind. I've taken a few measures to keep him comfortable in all this. When he sees who's on the roster, he'll be here for the duration. Michelle was sure of her methods. And if you're wrong, he'll die. The young man was absolute in his tone. Chapter 2. Roll Call. September 2nd held a new light as Harold's alarm shook itself off axis and onto the floor. He swatted at it with a stupor as he slowly righted to the brightness of the room. It was 8:14 a.m. He was going to be late. The phone rang as Harold tried to pull a fresh pair of slacks on from his dwindling pile of remaining clean clothes. He rushed to grab a clean lab jacket and had left with barely enough time to slip on shoes and gather his keys and wallet. The machine kicked in on the fourth ring. Harold was in the elevator as the line went dead. Harold had less than 15 minutes to cover 8 blocks in New York on foot. This would be the first time ever being tardy to his own initial staff meeting. It didn't bode well for his appearance as the lead researcher on the project. The street was undulating with people. Harold wasn't used to the fast pace. He held one hand tight inside his pants pocket, trying to prevent the numerous shoulder bumps from turning into opportune muggings. On the big screens described the buildings and architecture. The news above Harold was buzzing about vampires, about the historic research he was about to begin. 8 blocks were grueling. His legs were limp carrots by the time he walked into the building Cillian Industries leased to perform the studies. The security guard stood near the entrance. Mr. Thompson, you need to pick up your new badge to use the elevator and get through the checkpoints. What checkpoints? Harold hadn't noticed any when he went to his lab a few days ago. He handed his clip to the guard and received his new one. Next, you're going to tell me I need to sign in with a drop of blood, right? No, Mr. Thompson. Not yet, at least. The guard had a worried expression. Harold walked over to the elevator and pushed the button to no avail. You have to swipe your badge on the right now to get it to work. The guard shouted out from across the empty room. Harold saw the rectangular embossed card reader at the right of the steel doors. He swung his badge by it. The doors opened immediately. A tall man with long, straight black hair was standing, with his arms behind his back. His skin was pale, his eyes were dark, and he had a smile when he gazed upon Harold. He recognized him and was somehow pleased with what he saw. "Are you here for me?" Harold asked the poignant man. "My name is Edward Ellen Meadows. I've been sent to escort you to the main laboratory floor. There have been more changes that need to be discussed before you introduce your staff. Please step inside." Edward's movements were refined and had an eerily smooth motion to them. Harold walked into the elevator as Edward pressed the button for the 27th floor. "The lab is on the 12th level," Harold spoke up. "Not anymore," Edward corrected. "I don't know who you are, Edward, but—" Harold was cut off. "It's Ellen. I go by Ellen," he interrupted Harold. "I can assure you that you will have plenty of time to. For now, you must understand that your lab has been reset to include a broader range of research." Harold kept his mouth shut, letting the elevator rise to their destination in silence. The doors opened and Ellen gestured for Harold to go first. They made their way down an unfamiliar hallway. There was a long series of dorm-style doors with nameplates on them. They were all blank as Harold searched for some reasoning behind them. "What are those for?" Harold asked. Ellen said nothing. The hall continued as Harold came to a large security door. The metal was painted a drab, pale blue. The plaque at eye level read Cillian Industries Control Facility Research Room. There was no card reader, no handle, only a small depression to the right of the frame big enough for the end of a pencil to fit in. "How do we get in?" Harold didn't remember the guard saying anything about it. Ellen raised his finger and placed it into the hole. He turned to Harold. "Like this." Ellen flinched in pain for a brief second. He removed his finger and spoke towards the door. He held his hand tight, trying to keep his finger from Harold's sight. "Verify Edward Meadows," Ellen said to an almost unnoticeable camera peephole just below the plague. A computerized voice sprang into action. "Confirmed Edward Meadows." "Please confirm, guest." "Go ahead. It doesn't hurt that bad," Ellen said to Harold as he clenched his fist. "The hell it doesn't?" I thought the guard was joking when he mentioned blood sampling for identification. "I'm not doing that." Harold pointed at the depression on the wall and shouted. "Yes, you are, you wimp." It was Jenna following up behind Harold. She placed her right index finger into the device. "Jenna Hall." She turned to Harold. "Man up, it's just a fingerprint scanner." But Harold looked at Ellen with discontent. Jenna grabbed Harold's hand and pushed it to the reader. "Now say your name, bitch." "Ouch. You're twisting it," Harold whined. Say it," Jenna pressed harder. "Harold Thompson," he said as Jenna let go. The door clicked and began to slide back into the wall. "See, that didn't hurt at all," Jenna proclaimed as she walked proudly into the room. Ellen put his arm around Harold and ushered him inside. "From what I'm told, she's like this all the time. You'd better get used to it. You'll be seeing a lot of her." Ellen's words were lost on Harold's mind. He was thinking of his twisted digit that was throbbing as he traveled forward. They came to a set of small square lockers. Jenna placed her cell phone and leather wallet inside. Harold followed suit and locked up his things as well. Ellen watched and waited. "What? You don't have to do this?" Harold asked Ellen. "You misunderstand. I don't carry a cell," Ellen remarked. "And your wallet?" Jenna asked. "I don't need one. Everyone here already knows me." Ellen's answer was odd, but seemingly straightforward. Ellen led Harold and Jenna to a manned checkpoint. The guards nodded to Ellen as he passed by. The corridor behind the guards came to a white door labeled Laboratory. "We're here," Ellen smiled. Ellen opened the door to the large multi-station lab that took up most of the floor they were on. All of Harold's hand-picked microscopes, tubing, glasses, and instruments were at each individual station. Everything was familiar to Harold. This was home to him. The only thing that was confusing were the number of chairs at each station. In a normal lab, he was used to a single seat for each. This lab had two. You're late. I said 8:30 a.m. It's past 9. Michelle Price had crept up behind Harold and barked. You moved my things, Harold said firmly. Excuse me? Michelle was not amused. Jenna stepped up to slap Harold on the back. Oh, don't mind him. He's only tiffed you touched his toys. Then you can assure him we haven't changed any of the equipment, Michelle added, trying to backpedal. No, it's not that. Harold just isn't used to working with others, Jenna told Michelle. Yes, to Harold, these are people. Ellen spoke up with a personal commentary. Jenna and Michelle turned to question Ellen. No, he's right, Harold assured them. I don't get out much. Harold looked into the distance. There was a large open exam room. White walls filled with white chairs sat in a near-sterile environment. There was someone inside looking at him. Who's that? Harold asked Michelle. She's your first. Michelle gestured for the figure in the distance to come closer. The room was more than 300 feet away, behind glass. A security door opened in the far corner of the room. Harold searched for the person in the window. They were gone. I'm here. A deep feminine voice leaped into Harold's left ear. It was alto, smooth and deep. It provoked a warmth in Harold that he couldn't understand. God, who the hell is that? Jenna jumped into Michelle's arms suddenly. This is a research facility. You can't give every employee a heart attack before we begin. It's just rude, Michelle calmly told the new woman standing among the group. The woman was barely clothed. She had a long purple dress on. At first glance, it was strapless. But as Harold examined her appearance, he found it to be attached to her skin. There were small black grommets to which her clothing was pinned to her flesh. She was 5'10", towering over Jenna and Michelle, even Ellen. Harold saw her below his eye level. Her short black hair distracted Harold from their most obvious feature color. A dark purple, matching the dress, pervaded every corner of this woman's eyes. There was no iris. The whole pupil was transparent. Harold leaned into the mystery woman. Can I study you? The woman exhaled and smiled. I thought you already were. Harold snapped out of his daze. Are those real? Jenna stared. I mean, you're one of the vampires, right? Jenna, be respectful, Michelle commanded. No, it's fine. The woman appeared before Michelle in a flash. She placed her hand onto Jenna's right cheek. It's cold. I mean really cold. Jenna was ecstatic. My name is Ada. She suddenly stepped in front of Harold. You must be the one who will be penetrating me. What? I didn't. I mean, I don't plan to, if Harold was blushing heavily. She's fucking with you, man. Don't you see it in her face? Every time she smiles, she's getting a rise out of you. An attractive man with short blonde hair and a chiseled face spoke up. Normally, she's always serious. It's times like this when you have to watch yourself. She has a way of provoking people into saying things they don't want to. As the man came closer, Harold realized he wasn't wearing a shirt. His defined abs seemed to glisten as he talked. Harold felt inadequate. Put your shirt back on, Michelle instructed. Are you? Harold began to ask the man something. A peak specimen of this world? Yes, I am. He was quick to boast. No, Harold sighed. I was going to ask if you were a vampire as well. What's taking you all so long? We've been waiting. Get them to the conference room. He has a staff to brief. The loudspeakers above the group blared. The voice was a young male. Harold thought that things were just getting weirder as the morning went by. You heard him. Harold, you have a meeting to go to. Michelle took Harold's arm with force. What about me? Jenna was confused. She looked for support in the faces of the others. Ellen, Iada, and the shirtless man were gone. You're part of the staff. You're coming with us. Michelle led Harold and Jenna to a back hallway that was lined with clear sending tubes. As Harold turned the corner, he noticed a row of more than a dozen people in white lab coats. They were all a blur as he scanned over the crowd. Are these all mine? Yes, they're all under you. Are you ready? Michelle placed Harold in front of the 29 employees. Here, you'll need this. Michelle passed a clipboard to Harold. What am I supposed to do with this? Harold scratched his head. Is this your first roll call? Michelle sighed. She could see the answer on Harold's face. Just read out the names and find out who is on your team. You'll be needing to get familiar with all of them over the course of this. Harold reluctantly began reading off the list. George Zimmerman. The first man on the far left of the line enthusiastically raised his hand. Here. Harold could see this was going to be a lone morning. Kathy Schultz. Here, sir. The small woman answered with equal energy. Harold lowered his head and searched for the next name. Ryan Saunders. I'm right here, Harold, Ryan answered in a calm tone. Funny seeing you here. Harold lifted his gaze. He knew this man. Ryan had been in his class 10 years ago. He had been at the top of their class, popular with the ladies, and had always one-upped Harold for as long as he knew him. Ryan's green eyes showed relief as Harold recalled him. His dirty blonde hair hadn't changed in 10 years. He was slightly taller than Harold at 6'2". He was still as muscular as ever, possibly more so. It's been a good decade, hasn't it? Ryan smiled as he stood in place. It's been better to you, trust me, Harold answered. Continue with the roster. You're on the clock. Michelle butted in. We'll catch up later, Ryan suggested. I'd like that. Harold had been put in a good mood. Besides Jenna, he didn't know anyone there. Ryan brought some needed comfort. He stared down at the list. Penny Harrington? The roll continued with bright-eyed faces. 10 minutes passed and Harold was done. Now that the introductions are over, let's meet the subjects. Michelle gestured to the far door. But I didn't get to tell them my name, Harold protested. They already know your name. You're their boss. Now follow me. Michelle scowled. The door led to a smaller exam room with 9 people in it. Harold recognized the shirtless man, Ellen, and the woman with purple eyes, Ada. The remaining 6 were new to him. The first was a young girl in her 20s with light blonde hair and blue eyes. The second was a teenage girl with short red hair that was dressed in a red pantsuit. Her eyes were also blue. Next to her was a teenage boy with short black hair and green eyes. He wore a pure black suit. Fourth was a man in his 30s with a fluffy fur coat on. His ginger hair and freckles displayed his Irish roots well. His green eyes were light. Ellen sat next to him, arm in arm. The shirtless man was 6th. 7th was a man that had a familiar face that Harold couldn't place. He had very short brown hair and wore sunglasses. He was tall and thin. The 8th man was dressed in a black suit with a Christmas red tie. His long, straight black hair rivaled Ellen's. His pale skin was eerie, but his piercing red eyes held Harold's attention for a moment. Last there was Ida. Harold watched as her purple eyes stared at him. Her dress was unique and captivating. She was strange, even among the others. Harold had a difficult time concentrating. He couldn't take his eyes off Ida. This is Harold Thompson, the lead researcher in charge of this study. Over the next year, Michelle was cut off. Year. Harold snapped back into the room. His secular moment had been broken by Michelle's sudden proclamation of the time frame of his work. What's the matter, science boy? Your parents didn't tell you it was a sleepover. The shirtless man poked fun at Harold. Close your cankerous lips, Adonis. The young man in the dark suit quipped, I don't need to hear your bile for a year. He crossed his arms in disapproval. The young girl with red hair patted him on the arm. Now, David. That's no way to act in front of a stranger. I told you not to use my name here, Cherry. David became angry. The redhead laid back in her chair. So it's okay to call me out, then? Cherry was not amused. Adonis smiled at the interaction. Michelle stepped over to a white board that was behind her. She pressed a button and it slid back and into the wall. A large touchscreen display came forward. Is everyone paying attention? Or do you two need a minute outside? Michelle wasn't slowing down for anyone. She had a deadline to meet. No, we're not fighting, Cherry remarked. Michelle eyed Adonis and David. I'm talking about the shirtless wonder and the doogie over there. Adonis stopped smiling. David was not happy. Do you need a moment to pull each other's hair? Or are we ready to pay attention yet? Michelle had no mercy. David said nothing. Adonis sighed. All right, I'm sorry. I'll shut up. Harold patiently waited to hear what Michelle was going to say. 2 months ago, Sceience Industries contracted an excavation crew to remove and relocate a cemetery that had no living owner. The location has been kept confidential pending the results of this study. While digging, they exhumed a living body in the second level of a deep-chambered tomb. By the time an ambulance came, the body woke up and started claiming he owned the land. Harold was starting to piece things together. The man said that he had all the correct documents. When he showed them to the crew, and then to the foreman on site, everyone realized that the date read June 18, 1597. When asked to prove his relation to the deed, he left. 2 nights later, he appeared with 4 other men in front of the crew. He told them he was a vampire and that his name was the one on the deed. The excavation crew laughed and went about their business. The unknown man stayed and lifted one of their cat excavators with his hand. The crew immediately stopped laughing and called Sceience Industries. We in turn set this study into motion. Michelle placed her hand on the touchscreen. It lit up and read her palm print. An old document appeared on screen. Harold noticed it right away. Confirmed carbon dating June 18, 1597. Yes, Harold, the analysis of the letter came back authentic, Michelle stated. And you just happened to go to the trouble of blurring out his name for us? The man in the Christmas red tie noted. It's for our own good, Marin, David grumbled. You're an ass, you know that, David, Adonis chuckled. Of that he knows. Cherry smiled and patted David on the arm again. So why are we here? The blonde girl in a short pleated skirt was curious. Michelle angrily took Harold's new clipboard away from him and searched for a name, hastily flipping the pages. She settled on one and looked up at the girl. Paige, right? Paige sat up a little straighter in her chair. Yes? You're a vampire, and you didn't know what signing up for this test means for your kind. Michelle was visibly irritated. No, Paige was cut off. You what? Michelle went off. You come here thinking that you can just walk in and volunteer for a study that will define how the rest of the world views you? With no ideas or thoughts on the subject you're actively affecting? Or am I wrong? I guess maybe. Paige's answer further infuriated Michelle. Harold stepped in. Well, that's what we're here to find out. He took a step forward. This study will help us and all of the world to realize what miracles you hold in your bodies. We're sure to find out all your little secrets and inspect everything your body has to offer. Everything? Paige crossed her legs and smiled at Harold. Everyone in the room caught the subtext of Paige's words, except for Harold. Yes, everything. Harold smiled unwittingly. Michelle calmed down enough to continue. As I said, this study will change things. It will change the way the world works. Besides the blood and flesh, how do you plan on testing our gifts? Ieda entered the conversation. Harold was set back by her voice. He was too bothered to actually hear her question and respond. Michelle stepped in. We'll be noting your gifts, but only the ones we can quantify. Everything else will simply be added to your medical file. What she said. Harold turned to Michelle and nodded. Iada placed her left hand onto Harold's right shoulder. She had moved next to him while he was turned. There was no sound, no peripheral motion to be seen. She had simply appeared next to him. She slid her right hand up to Harold's chest and paused. What is it? Harold wanted to know why Iada was interested in him all of a sudden. What indeed? Don't worry, we'll talk about her later. Iada gracefully sat back down in her seat. Sounds like a lass has had your heart lately, the middle-aged man with the Irish accent commented. Ellen turned to the ginger man with disapproval. Oh, I'm sorry, dearie. The name's Crystal O'Brien. Crystal stood up enough to extend his hand to Harold. Nice to meet you. Harold shook Crystal's hand awkwardly. Then you will be submitting your findings to the world? Freely. A bold, inhuman voice boomed out from the one remaining person yet to reveal himself in the room. Harold finally recognized who the person was. Laurel Fessenden, I knew it was you. You're the lead singer from Seven Simple Sins, a bastardization of what you are, Laurel, David complained. I don't see you complaining when you use your gifts for profit, Laurel scoffed. David, not complain? That's unheard of, Adonis joked. Go to hell, Adonis, David griped. No problem, I have friends there. Adonis grinned happily, knowing he bested David. Be quiet, children, grown-ups are talking, Michelle interjected. Now that everyone has introduced themselves, we have business. The group sat still under Michelle's command. She was the authority, and it was clear. Harold turned to Michelle and listened. These tests have to include everything you do over the next year, Michelle said with a stern voice. Everything, meaning everyone? Adonis wanted to set the boundaries of the experiment with the lab. Michelle didn't take Adonis's comment lightly. She faced him with a scowl and elaborated. Each time you fuck, eat shit, and piss on your girlfriend's hands, I want you to note it. You will keep a journal of everything you do. There will be no exception, no limit to the test. Michelle could see another question welling up in the back of Adonis's mind. And yes, if you develop relations with someone on the research team during that year, I want you to jot it all down in your notes, Laurel sighed. Thank God, I was thinking I wouldn't have a chance to hit on Penny. Adonis turned to Laurel. I know, right? He gave Laurel an enthusiastic high five. Are you boys going to start shooting stones at her now? Michelle was purposely condescending. No, but I think we will be shooting something at her if the timing's right. Adonis made his lewd intentions known. Laurel tried to keep from smiling while he quickly got up and high-fived Adonis. Michelle rolled her eyes and looked at Cherry for feminine support. Don't look at me. I plan on having a turn with Penny as well. Cherry was just being honest. But her comment seemed to further annoy Michelle. Cherry turned to the two men and put her hands up. Laurel and Adonis leaned over and struck her hands at the same time. Now that you understand the depth of the testing criteria, you may want to listen for the rest of the briefing. Michelle was trying not to be staggered by the conversation she had just witnessed. Your involvement here is confidential and not to be discussed with anyone outside of this facility. Michelle faced the troublemakers of the group. That includes anyone you're doing sick and twisted things with, she continued. The testing will last from 1 hour before dusk until 1 hour after dawn. Isn't that a bit late? Harold asked. Would you rather it be during the day? Michelle proposed. Well, yes. Running a lab in the evening is hard enough. People fall asleep and tubes get mislabeled. I can't imagine what would happen if we actually did this overnight. Harold was voicing his concerns. Adonis, show him why we can't do this during the day, Michelle instructed. Gladly. Adonis got up and walked over to a side panel of the room. Michelle flipped a switch next to the wall. The panel suddenly slid to the side, exposing a bright sun that enveloped Adonis. He immediately burst into flames and began screaming in pain. Oh God, put him out! Harold yelled, scrambling for the fire extinguisher. No one was doing anything to help Adonis, not one person. Harold found the alcove with the fire safety equipment and pulled out the red CO2 tank. He raised the hose as Adonis flailed his arms back and forth around the room. Harold took aim and covered Adonis in white foam. He stopped screaming when his face was covered in what appeared like soap detergent. Are you all right, Adonis? Can you hear me? Harold was concerned. Adonis wiped his face off and stared at Harold. What? What's wrong? Harold asked again. You hosed me. That's what's wrong. Adonis wasn't happy feeling wet. Harold noticed that the sun was still saturating Adonis. Nothing was happening. There was no fire this time. Do you see why we can't do the testing during the day? How would all the vampires get into the building safely? Michelle pointed out the obvious. That's a good look for you, dearie. Do you want some hot chocolate to go with your marshmallow? Crystal chuckled. Don't embarrass us, please, Ellen pleaded with Crystal. Adonis lit up again in a short flash that annihilated the white foam. Harold jumped away, startled by the burst of energy. Can you stop that? You're scaring the researcher, Cherry asked Adonis. Why? He's kind of cute when he's squirming, Paige added with a smile towards Harold. Adonis stood naked. His clothing was completely burnt off of him. Adonis, put that away. Michelle disapproved of Adonis's appendage. Just because you don't enjoy it doesn't mean others don't, Paige commented. Crystal got up and high-fived Paige. When he sat back down, Ellen smacked his elbow after they held hands. There's an extra set of knickers in my room if you'd like, Laurel offered. No, I like the breeze. Adonis turned. Michelle, you can continue any time. He sat down, crossed his legs, and waited for everyone to settle down. Harold watched Adonis's skin. It was undamaged. His hair was partially scorched, but no more than a little. He studied Adonis as he was. We'll be testing him, right? Harold was getting excited to explore new avenues, to stake claim on new territory that no one had ever seen. Yes, we'll be testing all of their talents, Michelle told Harold. Now that you understand what's going on, this will be a lot easier. Chapter 3. Acquaintances. Harold sat in a small 7 by 12-foot room. He had been given a dorm-style bunk to rest up between testing schedules if he needed it. It was decorated with soft blues and an overall muted tone. He knew instantly that Jenna had something to do with picking it out. She knew him too well. Harold was waiting for 7 p.m. to come around. Dusk was set from a farmer's almanac that hung on the wall of each facility bedroom. His revelation that vampires exist and that some burn and others don't was itching at the back of his head. He wanted to examine all of them, especially Aida. Her eyes were ghosts staring through him. Get up, we're late. Jenna knocked on Harold's door with a thud. Harold made his way to the handle, opening it to see a disheveled Jenna trying to catch her breath. What's wrong with Harold's question was answered before it was finished. Michelle briskly walked by towards the testing laboratory. She was perfectly coiffed, except for a poof of hair that was ruffled on her right side. Jenna, I have one question. Jenna straightened her skirt. She was wearing a silver business dress suit that fit her snugly. You're left-handed, right? Harold was insinuating. Shut up, Harold. Jenna griped. Harold closed the door behind him and started down the hall. So I was right? That was a quick breakup. What made her swing back? Jenna gave Harold the evil eye as she rebuttoned her blouse. She was wearing heels and makeup, something she never wore. I spoke her language. Harold stared with confusion. I did the one thing that she couldn't resist as a business professional. Jenna was proud of herself as she finished straightening her shirt. What did you do this time? Harold was well aware of Jenna's past exploits with trying to get women back into her life. She was never calm about it. Mostly it ended with a dead chicken head in the ex-lover's mailbox. Jenna unbuttoned one level of her shirt to expose a little cleavage. Marketing? She smiled. Harold and Jenna made their way to the main lab floor. There was no badge access needed this time. The door was open. Well then, I'll see you after the night's end, in 10 hours. Jenna turned and walked off to one of the far lab stations. Harold had no idea what to do next. He looked around. Everyone else was busy either drawing blood from a vampire, storing it, or testing it. Harold, you've kept me waiting. You shouldn't do that. Ida's voice was melodic to Harold's ears. She was sitting at a lab station down the hall, in plain view. Michelle said that I'll be your first. How do you want to start? Huh? Harold walked forward, but didn't know what to say. You need to draw my blood to test it, don't you? Ida's calm voice soothed Harold. She stood up to him and guided him back to the station. They sat and she extended her right arm. At least you're right-handed. Harold made an inside joke to himself. What was that? Ida called him on it. Nothing. It was something that happened with Jenna. Harold was honest, but didn't want to go into details. Are you going to start on top? Ida asked. Harold's eyes jotted up to Ida's. Their intricate purple was lulling. What did you say? Are you start on the top portion of my arm, or at the lower? You could always use one of the grommets if you're uncomfortable with a needle. No, it's not that. Harold began to prep his station finally. He ripped open an alcohol swab and drug it over Ieda's right arm. He cracked open a fresh needle and placed it up against Ieda's skin. "Be careful with that," Ieda warned. "Don't worry, I'm actually quite good at this." Harold was getting into his element and forgetting that he was in front of a vampire. Ieda quickly took hold of Harold's right hand, keeping the needle a short distance from her skin. "No, you don't understand. You need to wear gloves. If any of my blood gets into you, it would create an issue." "What would it do? Turn me into a vampire?" Harold joked. "Yes." Ieda was serious. "I guess that would mean my objective perspective would be ruined." Harold joked again. "Yes, I would have to kill you if that happened." Ieda was calm as she spoke. Harold tried to move his arm to place the syringe down to search for a pair of gloves. He couldn't. Ieda's grip was absolute. "May I?" "Of course." Ieda let go. Harold put on a pair of blue exam gloves and re-prepped Ieda's arm. "Then I guess this means you trust me?" "No, it means I'm fairly confident that you value your life enough not to indirectly end it." Ieda's voice crackled slightly in a low tone. "But yes, it means I do trust you a little." Chapter 4. Old Friends. Harold had spent 4 days across from Ieda in the same tense atmosphere. He needed a coffee break. It was 1 a.m. Harold hadn't packed a lunch, and everyone was about to go out to the bar across the street for some liquid nourishment. Harold didn't drink. He didn't care to or have the need to. He was always alone. The coffee in front of him was filling enough with all of the creamer he put in it. It was sweet and near pitch white. He sat, staring out the high-rise window, watching people go in and out of the bar. Laurel, Adonis, Marin, David, Cherry, Ellen, Crystal, and Ieda calmly walked into the bar. Harold could see Penny arm in arm with Adonis and Laurel. He didn't think Penny was the type. Harold shrugged away from the window and stirred his ivory concoction. He sighed. There was a small double tap on the door to the refreshment room. "Harold, is that you?" It was Ryan Saunders. "Yeah, it's just me," Harold responded. He stared at his coffee and didn't truly realize Ryan was there. "So how have you been? I know we haven't gotten a chance to catch up since the testing began." "What have you been up to?" Ryan was curious. "Huh?" Harold raised his head. "Ryan?" He was piecing it together now. "Sorry, I didn't see you come in." Ryan chuckled. "Still as spacey as ever I see." Ryan stepped up for a hug. Harold stepped back. He clearly wasn't one to make physical contact. "Whoa, you have changed," Ryan said in disappointment. "You used to be my best friend, Harold. What happened?" Harold took a deep breath. "You moved away and I didn't have anyone to follow around anymore. There was no rival for me to run after." Ryan was silent. "When you left and I stayed, I didn't know what to do," Harold recalled. "I wanted to become a researcher, but I had no direction after that. Jenna told me you were engaged." Ryan brought up a noteworthy point in Harold's life. "Did she tell you she bled me dry and held me back from becoming a doctor too?" Harold's backlash was sudden and startled even himself. It was the first time he had said out loud that Mary had taken advantage of him. It was depressing to Harold that it had taken so many years to accept it. "Well, no, she didn't give that much up," Ryan admitted. "Did she tell you that I haven't had a date in 5 years? Or that I tried to hit on a lesbian?" Harold continued to go off. "I don't see how that part is pertinent to how you are now. Harold, you used to be my college rival. How did you get here of all places?" Ryan was beginning to praise Harold. "You're the lead researcher of this project if you haven't noticed. How'd you even get to New York?" Harold set his coffee down and sighed. "Sorry for blowing up at you." He got up and gave Ryan a heartfelt hug. "I've been thinking a lot about the past lately. Mostly thanks to Jenna. She can be quite the antagonist, can't she?" Ryan had hit the nail perfectly. "If she were a guy, it would all make sense, wouldn't it?" Harold suggested. "Yeah, she'd make a great wingman," Ryan oddly proposed. Harold laughed. "She has made a great wingman." Harold and Ryan nearly bent over roaring. Ryan sat down and started up again. "So you wanted to become a doctor?" When was this? It was while I was with Mary. She had fallen down and broken her leg during a mountain biking trip. You were on a bike trail? Ryan was surprised. Yeah. Mary led me to do some pretty stupid things now that I think about it. Harold faintly remembered trying to bungee jump. Anyway, she couldn't walk or ride back easily. I ended up forming a leg brace that supported her weight from the knee and hooked directly to the pedal. That's some MacGyver shit. That's awesome. Ryan burst out, cheering for Harold. Michelle suddenly walked into the refreshment room. You two having fun? She had clearly heard. Do you know what Harold did? Ryan proclaimed. No, nor do I care. Michelle was stern and quickly shut the door as she left. Well, that was rude, Ryan said softly. I can still hear you, Michelle yelled from beyond the door as she walked away. Don't worry, she was like this during my phone interview. Harold gestured for Ryan to sit back down. Michelle wouldn't have even called me for this project if it wasn't for Jenna. You mean Michelle and Jenna? Ryan was shocked. I wouldn't have called that one. Yeah, so I have good old Sapphic friend to thank for this job. Harold chuckled. I take it back. Ryan tried to hold his composure. To get you this job, she's the best wingman ever. Harold cracked a smile. I didn't think about it that way. Harold stared to the bar again and noticed Ida step outside. He stared. She's something, isn't she? Ryan commented. Who? Harold hadn't broken his stare. That Page chick, Ryan said casually. Who? Harold turned to Ryan, the blonde in pigtails. Ryan elaborated. I thought you were married? Harold raised an eyebrow. I am, kind of. At least on paper, Ryan sighed to himself. And your kids? What about them? Harold thought Ryan had the life he didn't. Cheryl threw me out last month. That's why I accepted this position. Ryan seemed depressed. So you'll be getting a divorce, I take it? Harold asked. Yeah, as soon as we can agree on a few things. Ryan sighed again. What is there to agree on? She wants your money, and you should let your lawyer handle the rest. Harold's cold-hearted nature towards Cheryl was fueled purely by his recent recognition of Mary's misuse of his own funds. It's not that simple. She's the one that has most of our combined wealth, Ryan explained. Harold nearly choked on his coffee. You mean she's more successful than I am? Ryan finished Harold's sentence for him. Yes, Cheryl is a full partner lawyer at Allen and Vaughn. You mean she's the Allen? Harold didn't quite understand. Yeah, she decided to keep her last name when she got pregnant with our daughter. We got married shortly after that, Ryan explained a bit more. Somewhere. I think she had this all planned from back then. You mean that she will most definitely get everything and you will be destitute soon? Does that about sum it up? Harold had an ability to measure things very well, even in social terms, at least when it concerned other people. Yes, Harold, you're right. Ryan stared across the street, but it sounds more painful when you say it like that. Harold took a sip of his coffee. Yeah, I have a knack for that sometimes. So I take it you and Ayada have been spending a lot of time together lately? What's up with that? Ryan asked with a grin. Harold quickly turned to Ryan. What? She's been cold to me the entire time. But from what I hear, she only wants to have you draw the labs and isn't letting anyone else work with her. How do you explain that? Ryan brought up a good point. Well, Harold thought about it. He couldn't come up with anything. I guess she's just uncomfortable with everyone else. Harold, that's not the answer I'm used to from such a deductive mind. Ryan shrugged his head. The old Harold would have said that if she was uncomfortable with others, that she must be comfortable with who she actually spends time with. Case in point, you. Harold didn't say anything. Furthermore, the old Harold that I knew wouldn't have guessed. Ryan was too damn good sometimes. Harold didn't want to accept Ryan's sound logic. You're wrong. Prove it, Ryan rebutted. Harold's throat became tight. Ryan raised his left hand to his ear. What was that? I didn't hear anything that resembled a valid proof. Harold was about to say something out of frustration when the door opened. It was Ida. Harold turned to the bar across the street. The others were just getting out. Ida had pulled out a chair and sat down at the table by the time he looked back. I didn't mean to interrupt. You were about to say something? Ida smiled. Her purple eyes opened directly to Harold. Yes, Harold. What was it you were about to say to prove my hypothesis wrong? Ryan was putting Harold on the spot. Harold leered at Ryan with irritation. Don't you have a few lab values to test? Yes, Mr. Lead Researcher, sir. Ryan sarcastically saluted Harold and left the room. So you think I'm comfortable around you? Iada was being direct. No, that was Ryan. Harold was honest but timid. Then you believe me to be uneasy around you? Ida pressed an answer from Harold. Harold was getting nervous. He decided to speak his mind freely. I want to know why you have been only working with me the last few days. Then ask. Ida had forced another direct action from Harold. Why do you only let me draw your blood? Harold had mustered the courage necessary to go further. What do you think of me? He had asked exactly what was on his mind. The very thing he secretly wanted to mention but didn't have the will to voice on his own. Those are two very direct questions. Ida smiled and gently placed her right hand onto the back of Harold's left. I'm impressed. That wasn't an answer. Harold pushed. You're right. Ida removed her hand. I trust you more than the rest. It allows me to relax enough for you to penetrate me. Then it's just because you aren't restless around me? Harold proposed. No, Ida firmly said. You're not a creep like the rest of them. My staff? Harold was insulted. Yes, most of your staff are creeps. Ida was certain in her feelings. Harold didn't like it, but he had to accept Ida's opinion. I'm sorry you think that. I'm sorry you don't know that. Ida replied and got up from her chair. What about the other question? Harold's voice cracked with his diminishing nerve. You don't want me to answer that right now, Ida said as she walked off. Harold sat alone in the room now. His white coffee was nearly empty. Well, that's what I get for trying again. Chapter 5, Revelations. 3 weeks passed as Harold continued to test Iada's blood. She said nothing as he examined her samples, her eyes closed to his. Harold patiently worked as Iada ignored him. The preliminary results of the tests were captivating to say the least. Harold had noticed that vampire blood was able to revert to stem cell form rapidly and as needed to perform almost any task at hand. It meant that a vampire would be able to constantly stay young and in a certain form indefinitely without aging. There was simply no cellular death occurring at all. However, to do this, the cells had to cannibalize 2 other cells, making the process costly to the total volume to blood cells in the body. Harold wanted to proceed to further testing, ergo, live foreign cells. Harold left Ida as she was sitting in her regular chair. He burst into Michelle's office. She was on the phone. Her voice was not normal. It was lighter and cheerful. Yes, honey, I love you too. Michelle's voice raised at the end of the sentence. Harold stood in the archway with the door open next to him. Michelle noticed Harold. I have to go. She slammed the phone down. How much did you hear? Her eyes were cold and deadly. She didn't want him to know why she was acting like she had. Harold didn't want to answer out of fear of losing his manhood. I want to test these cells on mice. That's not the answer I was looking for. Michelle stood up, angry. I've come up with some real data about the vampire blood. Harold was interrupted. You and every other couple on the lab floor, Harold. You didn't tell me what I wanted to know. Michelle wasn't searching for the results he was volunteering. What did you hear? Will you give me permission to advance to animal trials? Harold was bargaining. Michelle thought about it and was about to give Harold what he was hoping for. Harold felt a soft, cold hand behind his left shoulder. It was gently pushing him forward as the door suddenly closed to the office. The hand vanished as he turned. You don't have the authority to make that decision, Michelle. It was Ada that was now standing to the left of Michelle. But Harold was halted. Ida's cold, thin finger pressed against Harold's lips with intention. I wasn't going to allow him anything. Michelle backpedaled. I'm sure, Ida released Harold's words. I just wanted to proceed to animal testing. What's wrong with that? Harold asked Iada. Michelle, carry on. Iada took Harold's left arm. We need to talk now. Ida hastily pulled Harold out of Michelle's office and into the hallway. She shut the door with force. She led him to Harold's room in the dorm hall. She sat him down on his bed and locked the door. What did I say? Harold didn't know what he did wrong. Ida crossed her arms behind her back and leaned against the door. She took a deep breath and began a labored sigh. Her purple eyes intense and piercing, she set them on Harold. We need to clear something between us. It has to be taken care of right now, or this can't continue. Harold's throat became tight. You can never test our blood on anyone. Ida lowered her eyes and returned them to Harold. On anything without our express permission, do you understand? But I thought, Harold argued, there is no contesting this, do you understand? This is an absolute condition whether you like it or not. Iada slowly walked up to Harold and placed her arms on his shoulders. Harold was getting tense. He wasn't sure what she meant by all this. Ada gently pressed down onto Harold's shoulders, giving a light massage to ease his nerves. Harold relaxed and understood that these were Ida's direct wishes. Yes? Yes, what? Ida suddenly stopped massaging. Harold raised his head. Yes, I understand not to use your blood on animals or people. Good. Ida smiled and resumed the gentle massage. Ida, Harold said quietly. Why? Ida stopped and sat next to Harold on the edge of the bed. Her weight made no sound on the flimsy wood frame. Let me ask you a few questions so that you may comprehend our reasons. She turned to him with a short breath. How would you plan on caging this mouse? I don't see why that matters. Harold dismissed the importance of the question. Humor me. Iada smiled. In a mouse cage, of course. Harold answered. Then let me take you into the immediate future of that scenario. Iada leaned back into Harold's bed. Her legs were hanging off the end. 3 days after the confusion of wondering if the mouse will live or die, the mouse will escape from the cage. Within 30 seconds, 9 researchers will die. In another minute, the mouse will have killed everyone on this floor. Another 10 and the building will be quiet. Outside of the hour, a pandemic will break out in the city. Ada crossed her arms behind her head. But I thought your kind had to give your own blood to make another vampire? Harold tried to use a bit of logic to defunct Ija's doomsday explanation. We do, but wouldn't you try swinging at a 4-inch rodent tearing out your jugular? Ida was building a point. Yes, but I thought a normal person wouldn't be able to slice the skin of a vampire. Harold wanted clarification. An old vampire, yes? A new one, no. Trust me. Someone would find a way to cut into that tiny inbred lab rat. All it takes is for one person to get the spray of the blood, and you would have a real human vampire in a few days. The outcome would be worse if the rat got into the sewer system and some random creature was lucky enough to kill it. Everything else feeding on that little beast would turn in 3 days. Iada sighed. Do you get it now? Yes, Harold admitted. Yes, what? Iada wanted more. Yes, you're right, Harold gave in. Ida sat up. Then the same would happen if you would try it with a Harold, suddenly felt the pressure of a cold hand on his chest. Ida pressed into Harold, stopping him from talking. It doesn't matter what form of life you use, it's the same awful result every time. It just gets worse with higher animals, that's all. The only reason why we aren't as dangerous is because we can be reasoned with. She let go of his chest. Each vampire is responsible for the blood of their kind forever. But what if you die? Harold asked. From what we're naturally everlasting, Ida said with confidence. Murder. Harold thought he had picked a good example. If someone were to kill me tonight, Ida paused, letting her words sink in. My murderer would be responsible for disposing of my body. Ah, ha, you said their own blood. Harold had gained a foothold. Ah, no. I said the blood of their kind. That refers to all of us. Iada had trapped Harold well. What if you decide to commit suicide? Harold was getting bold. That implies preparation. The individual would need to prepare a death that eliminated the corpse. Ida had a solution for everything. What about accidental death? What do you do if you get hit by a bus or slip and fall off a cliff? Harold was grasping at straws. Are you listening to yourself? Since when have I displayed any sense of clumsiness? Ida stood back up. What about the bus? Harold stood as well. Ida moved to open the door. What about it? She walked through and into the hall. It's just a bus. This is a special chapter. It has a lot of lab values that can get a bit overwhelming. You have been warned. Chapter 6. Tempus Fugit. A week passed as Harold drew more blood from Iada. It had been filled with daily silence as he placed his warm hands on her cold skin. She no longer closed her eyes to his. It was only their lack of conversation that held subtle malice. She found him irritating, or so Harold thought. Michelle stormed onto the laboratory floor with a folder in one hand and an office phone in the other. She had on a silver dress suit. Harold thought he recognized it, but decided to not mention it. Michelle waved the vanilla folder in her hand. It's rotation time, her words implying more than her enthusiastic smile. She loved causing organized chaos. What exactly does that mean? Harold asked the obvious question. Michelle ignored it. I have your new assignments on this sheet. Make sure you check in with me before proceeding with any new testing. At this phase, you should be doing the same thing with a different partner. Harold understood. He would soon be losing time with Iada, his head lowered. Don't worry, Harold. I'm not leaving. I'm only moving across the aisle. Iada's soft voice raised Harold's spirits. Michelle walked up to Harold's station to give him a personal copy of the new pairing roster. Because you're the lead researcher. She slapped the paper down on the desk. Harold heard a girlish squeal coming from the main sheet left posted on the bulletin board. There was a quick rush of wind next to Harold's right shoulder. The scent of petulae and herbs invaded his nose. It was putrid. I'm so happy. We get to work together for the next few weeks. Are you happy? Paige asked in a giddy, infantile tone. What was that? Harold was confused as to why he noticed Paige's movements and not Iada's. Harold, do you remember what I said about balance placed in the way we all move? Iada turned to Harold. Yes. Harold didn't know where Ida was going, but he ran with it. I take it back. She would be the exception. Ida got up and began to walk away. The bus too? Harold stood and called out. Paige didn't know what to say. She remained silent. Ida stopped but didn't turn around. Definitely the bus. There's no doubt about that. Paige smiled eagerly at Harold. Why are you talking about public transportation? She paused. Her face dropped. Don't tell me you don't have a car, do you? Harold didn't know how to respond to such a double negative sentence, so he chose not to. Yeah, I'm real happy to be your partner, too. He faked a small smile. Paige quickly sat down on Harold's lap and put her left arm around his shoulders. She leaned into his right ear. Now we get to have some fun, she whispered. Ida stopped walking in her tracks. Maybe later tonight we can do a little of our own research into my body. Paige was being very forward. Ida didn't move. She was waiting for something. Paige, Harold sat, backing away from her. I'm here to take some of your blood, not to flirt. Sure, you can hurt me too. I don't care. Paige was suggesting many things with her subtext. I'm only going to use a needle. It's what the other researchers have all used. It's nothing special, Harold noted. I don't care what you use to poke me. It's all the same to me how you do it. Paige smiled and leaned back into Harold's personal space. But it's sad to hear that you would refer to it as nothing special when I'm sure it's anything but. Harold jumped up from her chair. Paige, I don't think you understand what I'm here to do. Paige crossed her arms behind her back and swayed back and forth with her hips. And what exactly is that, Harold? Ada partially turned to listen more to what was going on. I'm here to prove you don't exist. That vampires are just fairy tales used to scare the world to sleep. Harold's face was cruel and he knew his words hurt Paige dearly. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to... Do what exactly? Ida appeared in front of Harold. She wanted his answer. What? Harold wasn't sure of the question. Why did you come to this point in your life, Harold? Of all the things that you could have been, what led you here? Ada's words struck Harold hard. Harold couldn't answer. He was speechless. Paige, I think you need to leave for now, Ida told her in a commanding voice. But he didn't ask me to. Paige wanted what she had come for. I'm pretty sure I can prove him wrong more than you can. Take your wilted flower and let this man make up his own mind. Ida insulted Paige. Of course, Paige was cut off. I don't want you, Paige. I just need to study you, that's all. Harold snapped. Paige backed away, startled at what she had heard. She had never been rejected before. She stormed off, pouting. Thanks, Harold said to Ida. For what? You were the one that refused her advances. Ida grinned at Harold. You know you didn't answer my question. What question? Harold asked. We'll have to work on that memory of yours, you know. Ida sighed. Why a researcher? Didn't you want to be anything else by the time you were 30? I'm older than that, Harold defended himself. I know, Ada rebuked. Harold thought about it and sat back down as he exhaled. Ida found her way to the second lab chair across from him. I wanted to become a doctor, Harold admitted. Why don't you? Ida pried. I took a different path, I guess. I shacked up with the wrong woman that used me for her career instead of allowing me to pursue mine. Harold gulped, finally letting himself hear what Jenna had been telling him for years. I didn't ask that, Harold. Ida leaned in and stared directly into Harold's eyes. I want to know why you don't try and become one now. Lots of reasons. Harold was frustrated by the question. Such as... Ida raised an eyebrow. Time, money, drama, Harold sighed. What drama does a man of your nature keep in tow? Ida doubted Harold's excuses. No girlfriend, Harold said it. And what would a girl do to change your life? Ida wanted more of an answer. Stabilization, Harold said quickly and under his breath. Girls can't bring that level of order to men. Only a woman can, Ida informed. Ida reprimanded Harold. Know your place and choose your words carefully. You are speaking to someone that's not human. I know that now. Harold cut Ida off. So you still don't believe I'm a vampire yet? Ida laughed. No, but I recognize that your body doesn't work the same way as mine, Harold stated. You have no idea how right you are, Harold, Ada chuckled. Didn't you have something greater to ask me? Yes, I did. Harold shuffled over his notes. Since your heart beats very slowly and you have a very high sugar content to your blood. Spit it out. Iada wanted the question, not the explanation. Since your blood lingers in your body for long periods of time, does your blood ferment? Harold stared directly at Ada. Ada leaned into the desk. Are you asking if my blood is like alcohol? No, I'm asking if your blood is like wine, Harold corrected. Ada placed her left hand onto the back of Harold's. It was cold and soft. It sent a chill down his back that made his heart race. Ida lowered her eyes. I'm impressed. That was smooth. What was? Harold didn't make the connection. Ida removed her hand. Never mind. I have a theory. As you age, your blood becomes more fermented and stronger somehow. That's why you are immune to most infection. Your blood has high levels of alcohol that kills anything it interacts with. Harold was proud of his hypothesis. You're half right, Ida pointed out, vaguely. About which part? Harold wanted clarification. Does it matter? Ada was beginning to enjoy messing with Harold. If I tell you now, what more would you have to test? Everything, Harold contested. I would need to sample your soft skin, your supple lips, your amazing eyes. Harold, Ada stood up. That's kind of you to say. Did I do something wrong? Harold got up and reached for Iada's hand. It was cold in his, almost delicate. Iada stopped, letting Harold's hand warm hers. It's a shame you never pursued your dreams. What does that have to do with anything? Harold asked. My decisions. Ada let go of Harold's hand and walked away. Harold turned back to reach for her file to discuss more issues he wanted to bring up. When he looked back, Ida was gone. 2 days passed. Harold began to regret staring at the bar across the street. He sat back in his small room, pondering what Ida meant in their last conversation. Harold put down the file. She's much older than I am, Ellen said simply. Harold glanced back at the file. Oh, I didn't realize you had just turned a few months ago. How did it feel? Is this part of your study? Asking such a personal question? Ellen didn't enjoy talking about his day of turning. Well, yes, it is part of the study. It all is. Even this conversation, all of our interactions count as being on record. Harold's face begged an answer. Well, my sire made it as unsensuous and painless as possible. He asked me to remain still as he placed a needle into my skin. Ellen was cut off. No fangs. He didn't suck you dry. Harold was heated over his own misconceptions of what a vampire would do. Marin thought it would be inappropriate for us to get too close while Crystal was watching, Ellen explained. You mean Demetrius Marin? The one in our group? Harold checked. His name is Demetrius Del Marin. He prefers to be called Marin, Ellen corrected Harold. Regardless, he is the one who made me what I am, finally. Finally? Did he take a long time to decide? Harold was inquisitive. Ellen hesitated. He chose to turn me years ago when we met. There was simply a complication that needed to be eliminated first. A complication? Harold didn't understand. Someone had to die, Ellen admitted. Harold was startled. He wasn't sure he heard Ellen right. It was a young boy, Ellen said softly. That's not helping my opinion of the situation any. Harold was uncomfortable about the conversation. Don't worry, the problem solved itself. Ellen's words weren't soothing Harold's mind. Don't worry, he didn't die. He only became something else that was no longer a direct threat to me being a vampire. With that obstacle removed, Marin sired me immediately. Harold exhaled. I'm glad to hear that. Harold, let me ask you something. Ellen paused, finding the words. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be a vampire? Not really. Harold was being honest. You never dreamed about living hundreds of years? Ellen was curious. Don't you mean forever? You guys don't die of natural causes as far as I've gathered. Harold found Ellen's phrasing odd. No, I mean exactly what I said. We're not immortal, Harold. Ellen chuckled to himself. In the words of a friend, being a vampire only means you can take a lot of damage before you die, or something to that effect. She was scolding a child at the time after all. He regained his composure. We all die. It's just that vampires usually have the luxury of choosing their death at the end of a long, fulfilling life. When you put it that way, no. I don't know. Harold thought about it. I guess I don't think I'd have enough to do with such a life. I'm only a lab crawler. It's not like I'm a doctor or anything. And if you were? Ellen cried. If you were a doctor right now and would be able to help people for hundreds of years to come, would that change things? But I'm not, Harold argued. If you were, Ellen wanted his answer. Then yes, I think I might be interested, Harold blurted out. Ellen seemed very pleased with himself. He had pulled teeth to get it, but it was there, the answer he had demanded. Why? Harold had an idea. 0K millimeter 3 hemoglobin, 19 grams per dealer, hematocrit HCT 39%, 39 minus 54% coagulation, ACT 19 seconds, 90 minus 130 seconds APTT 6.913 seconds, 21 minus 35 seconds platelets, 652,000 milliliters, 140,000 minus 450,000 valor bleeding time, 49 seconds, 3-7 minutes thrombin time, 5 seconds, 11-15 seconds, hemodynamic parameters. Cardiac index, 8.8 Ls per minute per nook meter, 2.5-4.2 Ls divided per minute m2. Cardiac output, 13.1 lpm, 4-8 lpm. Mean arterial pressure, 160 millimeters Hg, 70-105 millimeters Xg. Stroke volume, 128 milliliters beat, 60-100 milliliters beat. Arterial values pH 7.89, 7.35 nitro 7.45 O2 saturation, 100% 96 nitos 100% venous values, pH 01 7.31, 7.41 O2 saturation, 62%, 60 nit 85%, general chemistry, alkaline phosphatase 108 U per liter, 32 nitos 110. UL ammonia, 12 micromoles per liter, 11-35 micromoles per liter, calcium 14 milligrams per day L, 8-11 milligrams per day L, carbon dioxide 10 micro per liter, 21-34 microglucose, 705 milligrams per day L, 65-99 milligrams per day L, iron 130 micrograms per day L, 52-169 micrograms per day L, lactic acid 0.32. MEQLL 0.4-2.3 MEQLOs, osmolarity. 239 mix mos per leak per glycerin per potassium 4.0 meters per liter 3.5-5.5 meters sodium 238 mix per liter 135-14.8 mix per liter cholesterol 40 milligrams per deciliter 30-75 milligrams per deciliter triglycerides 67 mg Dale, 40-170 milligrams per Dale. Everything was in order with what Ellen had told Harold about vampiles. Nothing stood out. Zach Giver? What's this kid doing in all this? Why him? He doesn't even sound that interesting, Harold said aloud. It didn't make sense why Marin was worried about this one file. Regardless, he didn't want to test Marin's resolve. Slowly, everything that he was researching about vampires was coming true. Placing himself on the wrong side of that understanding seemed an egregious error. Harold sat back, resting with the file on his lap. He began to think about his conversation with Ida. He wondered if he was able to have a second chance at life. Would he be with her entire body to his? We don't produce adrenaline suddenly like you do, but we do react to pain. What does that have anything to do with what he just did? Harold couldn't think with Ida's quenching body against his. It's fight or flight in a way. The difference is that the adrenaline in our system is already there. We only need a reason to be made aware of it. Ida raised her left arm and reached behind Harold's head, gesturing with her eyes, to the spot on Adonis's arm where he scratched himself. Pain activates it, clearing the drunken feeling from our minds. Beautiful, Harold said strongly. Ada wasn't sure as to what Harold was talking about, though she wasn't going to ignore it. She turned around to face him in the dark bar. For a moment, her eyes appeared purple again in the dim lighting. Good answer. She lifted up on her toes and kissed Harold on the lips. Iada's lips were soft, nothing like Harold was expecting. They weren't as cold either, feeling warmer than the rest of her skin. He gathered his arms across her back and held her up, prolonging the kiss. She was surprisingly heavy. Harold remembered that her weight was never listed in the medical files, nor any of the others. His lack of concentration on the embrace began to show as Ida pulled away. We'll talk later about that. Ida returned to watching the contest. Harold had seemed to forget the last few minutes of time. The kiss was bliss before his mute life. It was stunning. She was everything he was missing. His thoughts slowly came back to his head. It was strange as to why she felt heavy. Harold always imagined vampires being light and weighing practically nothing. The reality of the myth was coming to pass over his situation. Suddenly the larger man shoved Adonis in the chest. He was pissed. His dark black short hair and rippling muscles on a 6'8" frame would have intimidated any other man, apart from a vampire or Adonis. What the fuck was that? The man was horribly drunk but still had the coordination to stand and curse. You're half my size, there's no way you should be sanding right now. You've cheated. Adonis was obviously sober now, at least enough to talk back. Just admit you've lost and pay me what you owe. Or what? The drunk man pressed his right finger against Adonis's chest. Without warning and with seemingly no one able to recognize the sheer speed of his actions, Adonis took the man's finger and bent it backwards, flat onto his wrist. His hand held the finger tight in this awkward position and squeezed as he stepped forward into the man's personal space. Adonis whispered in the man's face loud, "This chapter has more lab values. It looks better on the page but can be hard on the ear. You have been warned." Chapter 7. The data. Harold slept and woke up in a room different than his own. He could tell he was still within the building, just not in a part familiar to him. The room was twice the size of his dorm-style bed away from home. It was, of course, more pleasant than his. The entire room smelled of vanilla. "You sleep too long." Ida's soft voice was unmistakable. In an instant, Harold understood where he was. He shot up out of bed. The falling covers revealed that he was only half dressed. His shirt was missing. He was in only his slacks and socks. "Ida, what happened last night?" "You know, for someone that doesn't drink, you have a bad morning after memory," Ida remarked. Harold sat up to the side of a black satin bed with matching sheets. "Refresh me, did we? Sleep together?" Yada filled Harold in. Harold turned pale, and I forgot about it. "Apparently," Yada sighed. To my dismay, Harold sat for a moment collecting his thoughts about the prior night. How was it? He wanted to at least hear about it. How was what? "It's not as if we did anything more than the last night. What do the details matter?" Iada stepped behind a partition and began unhooking clothing from her body. "Of course the details matter to me." "I was there." Harold raised his voice. "Then you should have had the decency to remember." Ada clipped a new black dress onto her chest and back. Harold calmed down. "Hey, you said we did this before?" "Yes, this is the second night we've slept together. Do you remember now?" Ida stepped out. Her flowing long black cotton dress fit her well. Harold smiled when viewing Iada. She was a welcome sight regardless of how confused he was. "You mean the night I woke up with you next to me?" "Yes. The same thing happened." Ida sat down next to Harold in her bed. "Except you had the confidence to ask to come to my place at the end of the night. I seem to do that a lot when I'm tired." Harold rubbed the top of his head. "It would appear so." Iada sounded pleased. Harold relaxed. "So that's all that happened." He let out a sigh. "I'm sorry. Did you want more?" Iada said with a mute tone. Harold wasn't sure if Ada. Blood pressure, 29/10/120 systolic per 80 diastolic. Laboratory values, normal human values listed for comparison. Red blood cell count, 12.5 Mellers Merck-Wheeler normal is 4.2 minus 5.6 Meller white blood cell count. 13.6 K for millimeter 3 normal is 3.8 minus 11.0 K for millimeter 3 hemoglobin. 31 grams per del normal is 14 minus 18 grams per del hematocrit HCT. 34% normal is 39 minus 54% coagulation ACT. 6 seconds normal is 90 minus 130 seconds APTT. 0.64 seconds normal is 21 minus 35 seconds platelets. 2.9 million divided error normal is 140,000 minus 450,000 millibreller bleeding time. 7 seconds normal is 3. 7 minutes. 7 seconds, 3 minus 7 minutes. Thrombin time, 0.0011 seconds. 11 minus 15 seconds. Hemodynamic parameters. Cardiac index, 0.39 L's per minute per netode. 2.5 minus 4.2 L divided by min M2. Cardiac output, 0.52 LRPM, 4 minus 8 LPM mean arterial pressure, 3.0 millimeters Hg, 70 minus 105 millimeters Hg stroke volume, 4.0 milliliters per beat, 60 minus 100 milliliters beat. Arterial values, pH 10.58, 7.35 DO 7.45 O2 saturation, 100% 96 morning was 100% venous values, pH 10.99, 7.31 DO 7.41 O2 saturation, 29% 60.85% general chemistry, alkaline phosphatase, 160 U per liter, 32. 110 U per liter, ammonia, 26 micromoles per liter, 11 minus 35 micromoles per liter. Calcium, 31 milligrams per liter, 8 minus 11 milligrams per liter. Carbon dioxide, 2.7 micler per liter, 21 minus 34 micler per liter. Glucose, 3634 milligrams per liter, 65 minus 99 milligrams per liter. Iron, 205 micrograms per liter, 52 minus 169 micrograms per liter. Lactic acid, 0.0598 micler per liter, 0.4 minus 2.3 micler per liter. Osmolarity, 459 miclers mores per kilogram, 276 minus 295 miclers mores per kilogram. Potassium, 5.6 micler per liter, 3.5 minus 5.5 micler per liter. Sodium, 1,148 micler per liter, 135 minus 148 micler per cholesterol, 27 milligrams per dilitro, 30 minus 75 milligrams per dilitro. Triglycerides, 220 milligrams per dl, 40 minus 170 milligrams per dl, 29/10. Harold read off of Marin's file. That's interesting to know it's that high. From what I know of him, I would think it would be lower. Hugo chuckled. Harold didn't understand the humor. He began pumping up the cuff. A minute later, he was done. That can't be right. Harold took out his stethoscope and placed it on Hugo's arm. This might be a little startling. I'm sure it will be. Hugo silently smiled. Harold kept listening. Hugo remained quiet. 2 minutes passed. Are you alive? Harold was alarmed. Yes, I live, Hugo proposed. After the trial was over, they just went back to using messengers again instead of meeting in person. The ironic part is that they ended up having to meet every 300 years to take care of us. Why so long? Harold put Hugo's file down. We reincarnate, Laurel somberly told Harold. It takes that long for one of us to come back. But what can kill you guys? Based on these values, you have insanely high levels of sugar in your blood that you can convert to energy. Your blood doesn't need to move practically at all. Your platelet count is off the charts. You're near invincible. What does it take? The midday sun and a silver stake through the heart. Harold went all out, he wanted to know. Actually, that wouldn't kill me, Laurel chuckled to himself. The sun and silver? Harold wanted clarification. Yes, I'm immune to both. Laurel smiled proudly. Harold opened the small file cabinet next to his desk. He picked out Laurel's medical file and began reading. First name, Laurel. Last name, Fessenden. Blood type, B negative. Birth date, classified. Infection date, classified. Gestation period, 3 days. Onset of unique specialty, immediate. Eyes, gray-blue. Hair, light brown, short and scattered. Skin, British Caucasian. Visual condition, unremarkable. No scarring on facial region or any other skin contaminates. Description of unique specialty. Subject displays ability to manifest thought into the regression of physical matter. Defining characteristics, has an iris. Fangs, 2.0 centimeters. Fangs on top, 1 fang centimeters. Fangs on lower. Average temperature, 62.7 F, 98.6 F. Pulse, 0.6 BPM, 60 BPM. Resting blood pressure, 8/3 120 systolic divided by 8. I want to be with him. There's nothing to be unsure of. It's what I want. Penny's answer was instant. Harold wasn't sure. Penny's answer had bypassed the intention of the question. She knew. There was no doubt in her voice. He drew back the blood he needed for the samples. Then you never had any hesitation about being with Laurel? Or Adonis? Penny was direct about her circumstance. I know what I came to them for. And when I became pregnant, we all knew what that meant. I don't regret any of it. Harold felt better hearing it from Penny. So you'd do it again if you had the choice. Penny bit her lip and resisted the urge to make Harold even more uncomfortable. I won't say what I was about to, but no, I wouldn't change anything. Harold was relieved. He knew what he was going to do with Ida for once. He had a plan. He took out the needle and set the blood up to be tested later that night. Thanks. I'll remember that. You're welcome, Mr. Thompson. Penny smiled as she walked over to her station in the back. The next night came, and it was already lunchtime. There was a knock on Harold's desk. It was Ida in the same long purple dress she wore when Harold first saw her. By contrast, Harold was in the same lab coat he always had on. The only difference was a new black tie. "Don't say anything," Ida immediately warned Harold. Ida led Harold out of the laboratory, downstairs, and across the street to a small 24-hour coffee shop. She sat them in the back corner without a word between them. Once there, she placed both her hands on his and nodded. "What's this about?" Harold asked. Chapter 8: Accommodations. Harold turned around and began walking out of the break room. "Harold, wait. This isn't Ryan was cut off. Like Mary," Harold yelled without turning back. "You son of a bitch. This is exactly like Mary. After things didn't work out, you came in and did what you do best." Ryan took a second to zip up his fly. "No, Harold. Mary and I messed around before you broke up." Harold ran at Ryan with a rage that even he didn't know he had. There was anger in his lunge that echoed in his feet. Before his heated fist could strike Ryan square in the face, there was a sudden pressure in Harold's arm. It couldn't move. "I'm impressed, but this isn't the way." Ida's soft voice filled Harold's left ear. She lowered his right arm in her hand. She turned to Ryan. "Keep it inside if you want to keep it." "But he's my—" Paige spoke up. "I was speaking of you, Paige. You should know not to flaunt affairs like this," Ida scolded. Paige adjusted her shirt and lowered her eyes as she exited the room slowly. "Harold, I'm—" Ryan realized his words meant nothing. He walked off. "Why'd you stop me?" Harold asked Ida when they were finally alone. "I've never even been in a fight, but something about that felt right. I truly wanted to beat the shit out of him for what he did." Harold could tell Ida hadn't heard all of the conversation. "He slept with Mary before we broke up, before she felt me. It's not that I didn't know, I knew at the time. They weren't that smart about hiding it from me. So why didn't you hit him back then?" Ida eased back, sitting up against the table counter. "How do you know I didn't?" Harold posed the question. Ida's eyes did all the talking for her. "Okay, so I didn't even confront them about it. In an odd way, I felt that I would lose them both. Later, I lost Mary, and I just let my friendship with Ryan slip away. It's kind of hard to keep in touch with the man that drove a wedge between you and your girlfriend." Harold sighed. "Yes, you have a point there." Ida spoke from experience. Harold raised an eyebrow. "Keep going." Ida knew why Harold's curiosity perked up. "I'm never telling you that story, Harold. Just keep telling me about yours." As the years passed, I told myself it didn't matter what they did behind my back. She had left me regardless. "There was no way for me to hold any aggression towards Ryan for that," Harold went on. "So when I saw him on day one, I didn't really feel all that connected to him. I had purposely severed that tie a long time ago." Then when he said it aloud, "Why did you snap?" Ida was prodding an answer. "My emotions got the better of me." "I guess I didn't really know I had it in me," Harold admitted. "So you're telling me that you don't fully know yourself?" Ida was leading Harold into saying what she wanted. "Yes," Harold accepted that fact. "Then if you know it now, do you feel better because of it?" Ida elaborated. "There are countless people that go through life without ever knowing themselves. You have just discovered a part that almost passed you by, hidden forever. The question I'm asking you, Harold, is if you consider yourself better or worse for knowing what you would honestly do?" But I still wanted to hit him. I wanted to nearly kill him. Harold wasn't sure what Ida was getting at. "I know, that part doesn't matter. I want to know you if feel better knowing that part of your soul lingers inside, that if left unchecked, it might have done more." Ada waited. "But I knew it was wrong. I would have stopped," Harold contested. "You didn't. I did that for you." Ada posed a valid point. "And if it happened again?" "I would try to control myself." Harold tried to calm himself. "How?" Ada wanted to know more. "Does it matter?" Harold wanted to change the subject. More than you can understand. Answer, please. Ayada waited. I wouldn't let him get to me. Either that or I wouldn't ever see him again. Are you happy? Harold was taxed and feeling upset from what Ryan had come out with. Ida smiled wildly. Yes, I am. Let's go out. I want to talk about us. Ieda led Harold down to a cafe a few blocks away from the research building. There were few people there. They found a booth in the back corner with little echo. Ida decided to have a chat about the future. Harold, where were you before you came here? Ida asked. A few places, Arizona, Florida, Virginia, to name a few states. Harold was interested more in Ida than himself. Where did you come from? London, Ida said with a quickness in her voice. Tell me about how you lived. I was in a hotel. The same setup I usually get, paid rent, cable, electricity, and a rental car to get around. I would have my things shipped when I needed them, and held when I didn't. That's pretty much how I've lived for the last decade. Harold thought he had covered all the bases. I lived in a castle, Ida said abruptly. That I own, her statement blew everything that Harold said into the dust. How many relationships have you been in? 2. Harold dreaded Ida's answer. 426 to date, Iada said with a stern face. And how many of those were serious? Harold nearly swallowed his tongue. Ida's eyes were burning a hole in Harold's head before he could finish the question. I've been alive for more than a few hundred years. That's not a question you want to know the number to. Harold accepted Ida's reasoning. Then what is it that you're trying to prove by talking to me like this? Are you saying that we're not right for each other? Not as you are now. Ida's words broke Harold. Harold sat in the coffee shop booth with his head low and his mind running. Why? After everything we've talked about, why? Experience, Iada said honestly. That's not fair, Harold argued. It is. If you gauge it from your accomplishments when you were human, Iada tipped Harold's chin up. I was an artist with my clothing. I sewed for the kings and queens of my day. I had lived a fulfilling life. And I haven't? Harold raised his voice. Ida said nothing, letting Harold's own statement answer itself. Then it's all over tonight, like teenage kids breaking up on a whim? Harold mocked his situation. Are you going to give me back my ring and start dating Ryan now? No, he's a whore, Ida said. You mean Paige? Harold spoke up. No, her too, Iada chuckled. So this is the end, then? No more waking up next to you? Harold posed the obvious result of their termination. Ida leaned in to kiss Harold on the right ear. She whispered softly, I never said that. She slipped her cold lips over to his and pressed. Ida kissed Harold for over 3 minutes, taking full advantage of his overloaded bliss that came from her touch. She knew exactly how to turn him on. Ida let go of Harold's lips. Who said anything about leaving you alone? Harold exhaled. His breath was cold from the twinge in the air and Ayada's icy skin. We're not children, Harold. I like you, you like me. We can take this as far as we will allow it. Ida took a hold of Harold's hand. Tonight we spend the night at your place. 6 hours passed in Harold's loft across town. There were no calls. Iada had disconnected the phone upon arrival. They had not been disturbed. It was morning. An exhausted Harold got out of bed to go to the bathroom. Under the covers, Ida lay naked. A smile was plastered on Harold's face as he relieved himself. This has got to be the best breakup ever. He chuckled to himself. You need to sleep. We have to be back at work tonight, Iada said from under the sheets. Harold washed his hands. Then this is it after all? One night before we stop all this? No, it will end in a few months. Ida rustled under the sheet. You mean when you have to go back? Harold dried his hands. Yes, to London. Ida lifted part of the covers to expose herself to Harold as he walked back. Harold's face turned red. He enjoyed the sight. Why can't I come with you? Iada extended an arm out to Harold. I would need you to be different. Harold jumped into bed. You mean a vampire? Besides that, I would need to know you've accomplished more in your life. Ada knew how confusing that might sound. Just know that now is not the time and accept this for what it is, a good time. Chapter 9. Resolutions. The remaining months passed without incident. Ida had set a boundary that Harold needed to overcome. She had tested him in a way he wasn't used to, prodding him for an answer even he didn't know. The results of the rest of the tests concluded that everyone that said they were a vampire was not human. Cillian Industries wanted to hide the evidence, thinking they could save face after losing so much money trying to protest their seized lands. In the final days of the trials, the company signed a deal that allowed them to recoup a portion of the costs of the study by selling their findings to a few interested vampires. Harold and Ryan didn't speak after the walk-in incident. He and Paige hung out in her room up until the final days of the study. Penny had her baby. It was a girl. They named her Chelsea. Harold was surprised to find out it was a full-blooded vampire. He asked about it, but Ida reminded him about the chances. However rare, Chelsea was born a vampire. Penny was made a vampire from Laurel's blood immediately after giving birth. Cherry and Iada had to take care of the baby for 3 days while Penny turned. When it was over, she came out with gray eyes. Laurel was happy that his 2 women were rare examples of genetics. Harold never saw Marin, Ellen, Crystal, Cherry, Laurel, Penny, Ryan, Paige, or Adonis again. They left as soon as the study was over. All that Harold found was a note from Ellen that read, "You will find everything you desire in time." It sounded more like a fortune cookie than a goodbye note, but Harold accepted it none the less. Jenna and Michelle moved in together and were married in New York soon after. Jenna swore she would never settle down and have kids, but so did Michelle. The last thing Harold was told is that Jenna was propositioning attractive men to knock her up and sign a paternity waiver. George Zimmerman, Kathy Schultz, and the rest of the laboratory research faculty moved on to other projects. Harold heard that most of them were hired to test the biological effects of high SPF sunscreens on vampire tissues. 2 weeks after the end of the study, Aada stood at the front door of Harold's loft. All of the boxes were still packed from 1 year ago. Harold had successfully lived out of 3 boxes the entire time. It was 9 at night, and Iada was about to say her final goodbye to Harold. "I hope this is not the goodbye it is." Iada's somber expression was not herself. She was disappointed. "I can't say I didn't enjoy it." Harold smirked. "But did our time teach you anything?" Ida asked. "Yeah, I guess it did." Harold had become tempered from his time with Ida. "Can I come with you?" Iada leaned into Harold, placing her lips against his neck. "No," Harold pushed back. "Then I hope to see you one day in the future." Iada's eyes brightened. "I could wish for nothing more." She embraced Harold and walked away into the night. "Don't you want me to call you a cab?" "It's dark," Harold yelled out. Ada turned back for a moment. "Do I look like I need a cab?" "What about a mugger?" Harold warned. "You mean a free meal and spending cash?" Iada's joke didn't sit well with Harold, and she knew it. "I'll be fine." Harold didn't respond. He watched Ida walk away into the night until she turned the corner. With that, Ida was gone from his life. 3 months passed as the news captured the outpour of thousands of churches across the world. They unanimously argued the existence of vampires, noting that they were creations of the devil and not welcome on this earth. To that, most governments quelled the riots with one simple point: segregation would be open racism. And since the vampires were directly threatening to kill people, national tolerance became the norm. There were still those that clung to hatred, but in reality, there was no real hate crime that didn't end in a human corpse. Harold took some time off between jobs. He wanted to think about what to do next. He was searching for a direction to his life. He moved into the country, to a townhouse in Utica. Numerous magazines had tried to interview him asking about the year-long experiment. He had turned them all down, even after they all offered a great deal of money. Harold didn't want to share any personal information with the world. He thought about Iada a lot, daydreaming a bit more than he should about their nights in his loft. There was a piece of Harold's life missing. Harold sat in a coffee house. The people inside didn't matter. They were human. All he cared about was a certain vampire now. He thought about how he could possibly travel to London and find Ieda if he wanted to. He lamented his failed career as a doctor, thinking about all the preparation he had undergone during high school. Harold had logged hundreds of hours on a volunteer rescue squad as a teenager. He had taken hundreds of hours of advanced placement courses. All of it was wasted. "More coffee, sir?" the waitress asked in a soft voice. Her perfume was vanilla. "Ada?" Harold raised his head. "No, honey. It's Julie." The waitress looked nothing like Ada. She just had her tone of voice. "But I get off at 6 if you'd like to talk about it." Harold lowered his head in disappointment. A cold sigh was enough to dissuade Julie from asking any further. Harold didn't have the moment he needed to fully appreciate the depression he was in. There was a commotion across the room. Someone had fallen onto the floor and was shaking uncontrollably. "Quick, get a spoon! He's having a seizure! We need to make sure he doesn't swallow his tongue!" Julie yelled to the cook in the back of the kitchen. Harold immediately jolted up and rushed to the man on the floor. The cook tossed the spoon over to her, and she was about to place it in the man's throat. Harold took a hold of Julie's hand firmly. "Don't! You shouldn't do that." "But he's going to bite off his tongue. He could die." Julie argued and struggled against Harold. "No, he won't." Harold pulled the man away from the chairs and the wall. "Move those other chairs back." Harold lifted his shoulders. "Take his arms and legs. We need to make sure he doesn't hit himself." The cook stood and looked for something to do. "Call 911, Harold told the cook. The larger men in the area took the man's arms and legs, holding them still. "How do you know? Are you a doctor?" Julie asked Harold. "No, I'm not," Harold responded, pulling back the man's eyelids for a second. "Then how do you know this will work?" Julie wanted to be sure they were doing the right thing. "When someone is having a seizure, you should never put anything in their mouth. It could perforate the esophagus." Harold spit out the sentence like it was elementary. Julie clearly didn't understand. "It might tear his throat," Harold explained. "It's a common misconception." "How do you know all this?" Julie looked down at the spoon in her hand and dropped it out of shock from what she almost did. "I used to run in a rescue squad when I was younger." Harold looked back at the cook. "Did you get through?" "Yeah, they're on their way." The cook wiped his forehead. Julie stared at Harold with adoration. "You should really do this for a living, you know." "What?" Harold was surprised. "But I really didn't do anything." "The hell you didn't." "I might have killed that guy." Julie heard the ambulance pull up to the parking lot. The emergency medical team burst into the coffee shop. They brushed everyone away from the man on the floor. The 4 team members quickly surveyed the man and lifted him gently onto a stretcher. One of the EMTs looked down to see the spoon on the ground. "You didn't use this, did you?" Julie's face went red. She couldn't talk out of sheer fright. "No." Harold stepped in. "I didn't let it get that far." Nothing was placed in his airway. The other EMTs carted the man outside. "Thank God. You have no idea how many people we get that are bleeding to death by the time we get to them because of those damn things." The EMT gestured to the spoon on the floor. "Thank you." The EMT shook Harold's hand. "Don't worry about it." Harold graciously nodded his head. The EMT jumped back into the front of the ambulance and they sped off. Julie turned to Harold. "That was amazing." Harold and the rest of the patrons went back to their corners of the shop. "How much do I owe you for the coffee?" Harold humbly asked. Julie coughed in astonishment. "Let me get the ticket." She left for the back of the kitchen. A moment later, Julie, the cook, and the 3 other waitresses came up to Harold's table. "What's this?" Harold was confused. "Your check," Julie said proudly. "But you don't have a ticket?" Harold raised an eyebrow. "Everyone," Julie spoke up. "Can I get your attention? Thanks to this good Samaritan, a man will be able to go home to his family tonight. Let's everyone give him the thanks he deserves." The whole of the coffee shop stood. All 20 people clapped for Harold. I don't know what to say. Harold was speechless. "Say you'll keep doing this." Julie stepped up to Harold and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Everyone's cheers settled down and they quickly went back to their activities. Harold gathered his things and began to leave. He turned back to Julie. "But what about the bill?" Julie laughed. "You're hopeless, you know that. It's on the house. Just put the $5 towards becoming a doctor and we'll call it even." Julie smiled. Harold left the coffee shop with a sense of exhilaration. He was happy for the first time in months. A doctor? Maybe it's time. Chapter 10. Planning the Moment. 10 years passed. Harold enrolled in medical school to become an ER physician. It took him about 5 years with the credits he had already taken years ago. He was able to test out of many classes. He had found a job and moved up as an overnight physician at a level 2 trauma hospital in Virginia. He had made himself into exactly what he had wanted almost 2 decades ago. One night, before work, Harold gathered his things and made a declaration. He recalled his nights with Ida long ago. Now, in his early 40s, he wanted the companionship that a stable relationship brought. He wanted Ida. Harold picked up the phone and dialed his work. The phone rang. "Hello, ER, this is Tammy," the receptionist answered. "This is Dr. Thompson," Harold spoke up. "I'm going to be out this week. I'll call to have another doctor fill in for me tonight. I just wanted to let you know they will be there a bit late." "Okay, thank you, Dr. Thompson. I hope you have a wonderful time off." The receptionist bid Harold a good farewell. Harold heard a click on the other end of the phone before he hung up. He thought it was odd, but didn't linger on it. He made his way to a suitcase that had been packed for weeks. The idea had been on his mind for a while. Only now did he feel accomplished enough to pursue Ida on his own. The weather outside was grim. There had been a storm forecast for the next 3 days. Harold had boarded up the windows and reinforced the doors for his long trip. He had planned for up to 3 months. He would ask a partner in his physician's group to cover him week by week as needed. As Harold walked into his bedroom, the power went out. The storm outside bellowed against the roof. The rushing sound of the wind moaned. Harold sighed. He thought about his plans for a moment. If he couldn't manage an outage in his own home, there was no way he would be able to make it by himself in Europe. There was a sharp pop that rang from the front of the house. It startled Harold from his train of thought. He walked over to the door. Harold examined the lock. It was bent inward, towards the door frame. The brass ring around the deadbolt had fallen to the floor. It was the sound he had heard. "This isn't possible," Harold said to himself. "Metal doesn't bend like this normally, not without breaking." Harold felt a rush of wind carry a pepper of rain through the open door. He pushed the hallway nightstand against to keep it closed for the night. As Harold turned back, there was a flash of purple in the corner of his eye. It was moving up the stairs to his bedroom. The storm outside crashed, hailing down wet rain over the weathered house. "Hello, is someone there?" Harold called out as he pursued the figment. There was no answer before Harold as he walked into his bedroom. No sound to reassure him there was another person in his house. Harold listened to the rain pouring on the window. There was a sense of calm that had come to him, not from the storm or the idea of the trip, but his experience. In the 10 years since he had seen Iada, Harold had grown as a person. He had gone through the life changes that he needed, the things he had been longing for before Mary had dumped him. There was a reassurance to him, the understanding that even if there was someone in his house, it didn't matter. Harold had lived a life now. He had helped thousands of people through difficult times. He felt complete enough to have no regrets. As Harold turned around, he instantly recognized the scent of vanilla. "I've waited for this moment, Harold." A soft, familiar voice spoke out from the darkness beyond the hall door. The vision of a long, dark purple dress formed in front of Harold's sight. The figure stepped forward. "That makes 2 of us, Ida." Harold's tone was confident, asserting he was a different person than what Ida had remembered. "You've changed," Ida complimented Harold. Without words, Harold walked over to Ida and embraced her. He dipped her back and, with a sense of power and masculine grace, kissed her lips firmly. Ida didn't argue. She didn't struggle against Harold's actions. She only accepted them and enjoyed them as they were. With a slow motion, Harold returned Ida upright and partially winded. Harold stared into Ida's eyes. I know why you've come. You have a question. Ida smiled in response. She was overly pleased. Yes, I do. The answer is my life, Harold told Ida firmly. Go on, Yada allowed. I wish to offer my life to be with you. I wish to give my medicine to the world as I tread through it. Harold brushed his right hand across Iada's left cheek. I wish to be beside you for time, immemorial. Ada perked up and hugged Harold. She whispered into his right ear. Good answer. The storm outside whipped the house, causing the boards on the windows to shake. Harold held Ida tighter. And you know what you have to do? Ida asked. Yes, I have everything in the bedstand. Harold gestured. Ida glided over and opened the drawer. There was a full lab kit to draw blood. You really did expect me, didn't you? I had a thought you might be watching me for a while now, Harold admitted as he sat down on the edge of the bed. You really have matured, haven't you? Ida opened the alcohol pack and rubbed it on Harold's left arm. But you're still a bad liar. What are you talking about? Harold refused to say it. Ida removed the casing from the needle and inserted it into her own arm. Who told you? Harold watched the dark vampire blood fill the 50 milliliter syringe. No one said anything exactly. Ida removed the needle and placed it to Harold's skin. She waited for a response. Who? Harold understood the stakes and caved. I saw Ellen at a coffee shop a few months ago. Ida gently drove the needle into Harold's left arm. He didn't say anything, or even come over to say hello to me. He only made himself visible and left without a word. Harold watched as Ada slowly plunged the blood into him. I'm glad he did that. It made this a lot easier than I had expected. Ada kept the flow steady as she spoke. What do you mean? Harold began to feel Ada's blood fighting and devouring his own. His heart began to race. This way you'll have something to think about for the next 3 days. Ada pushed the rest of the blood into Harold's arm. I'm sorry, Harold. I don't have it in me to kill you for this. Harold began to tremble and writhe in pain. What do you mean? This is the beginning, Harold. It will only get worse from here. I could help you, but you need to understand what this feels like for yourself. Ada lowered Harold's head into her lap. It's okay, you'll pass out soon. And when you wake up screaming, I'll be there. Thank you, Ada. I'll get through this. Harold's view of Ada began to fade. Why? Ada asked quickly. Because I love you. Harold passed out. Ada held Harold in her arms on his bed. I know, I've loved you too. Ada picked up his hand and put it in hers. I'm glad you finally realized that I need you as much as you need me.